Welcome back, everybody, to the Jacksonville Jaguars franchise here on Madden 21. As today, we have the long-awaited 2022 NFL Draft. Obviously, as you will probably be able to tell throughout the video, I have worked very hard on this episode, so get your popcorn ready. I know you guys are going to enjoy it. Let's have some fun. So, last episode was free agency, and our Jaguars were heavy spenders. We were not afraid to make aggressive moves, and this is going to be a really fun football team next year. This was a really good free agency class, and we were not afraid to sign some of the top players. Leighton Vander Esch, Orlando Brown, those are the two big fish we got. We re-signed David Njoku and Ronnie Harrison to 2-year deals, and also brought in Josh Jackson, Fuller Reynoso Fatukasi, Taco Charlton, Volker Gantz, Richard Benson, Sam Walford, Jack Fox, and the GOAT, Trace McSorley. Around the league, there is no shortage of movement. J.J. Watt is no longer in our division. He's a Cardinal. Jaire Alexander to the Giants. The Bengals were very aggressive. They signed Von Miller, Mark Andrews, and Braden Smith. Baker Mayfield is now a New York Giant. So the Giants have Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, and Jeremy Watson all on their roster at quarterback. We were also active in the trade market last episode. We acquired J.K. Dobbins from Baltimore, Damian Lewis from Seattle, and we traded away Joe Schobert to the Chicago Bears. So this team certainly looks a lot different than it did last year, and we haven't even gone through the draft yet. Obviously, we're going to have plenty of new rookies come in and hopefully make an early impact. Here's a look at all of our draft picks. We own each of our picks in every round. We also own an additional 4th, 5th, and 7th, I believe. So we have 11 picks at the moment. Obviously, we've done a lot of prospect profiles with this draft class. If you would like to download the draft class, you can. It is called Jags Class 2. You can also type in my PSN. It is available on both the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. So even if you have not moved up to the next gen yet, you can still download the console. So here we are. The NFL Draft is officially here. The Atlanta Falcons have the number 1 overall pick. Do they go with the best player on the board, edge rusher Delvin Hines? Do they go with a quarterback? Matt Ryan's not getting any younger. Look at maybe Marcus Trotter out of Ole Miss or Westlake Stephen Westwood. Let's end the anticipation and let's get to the draft. With the first pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Delvin Hines, edge rusher, Westlake. I know the Falcons need their heir apparent to Matt Ryan, but I cannot blame them for making this selection. Delvin Hines is arguably the greatest pass rusher in college football history, finished his career with 61 sacks, which is an NCAA record, including 27 as a senior. He has freakish athleticism off the edge and will immediately change the Falcons' defense from day one. With the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Marcus Trotter, quarterback, Ole Miss. Speaking of teams needing heir apparents for their longtime quarterbacks, the New Orleans Saints got theirs for Drew Brees, and it's Marcus Trotter out of Ole Miss. The Saints had Nick Mullins as their starting quarterback last year, so Trotter will be able to come in right away and be the day one starter. He's a very well-rounded quarterback, extremely polished, and does everything pretty well. I think he's going to be really good right away. Phenomenal selection here for the Saints. With the third pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Braylon Gurlin, offensive tackle, University of Florida. The anchor of the Florida Gators offensive line, who of course ended up winning the national championship this past season, is the left tackle Braylon Gurlin, who is the 3rd overall pick going to the Denver Broncos. Gurlin will step right in as the left tackle. He's an excellent pass blocker, and he's going to keep Drew Lock upright. It looks like the Broncos still believe Lock is their guy and get him a much-needed franchise left tackle. With the 4th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Chantrez Bickers, edge rusher, Oklahoma. Pay attention, Jaguar fans, because you guys are going to play against this kid twice a year. Chantrez Bickers out of Oklahoma is an extremely talented pass rusher. The Colts defense is one of the best in the NFL from head to toe, but what they're missing is a dynamic pass rusher. For them, hopefully that guy is Chantrez Bickers, who is also a freak off the edge and is kind of Delvin Hines, but just not as dominant. With the 5th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Maxwell Patterson, edge rusher, Iowa State. For whatever reason, Matt Patricia is still the Lions head coach, but believe it or not, the Lions have actually drafted a linebacker with some talent. Maxwell Patterson is a versatile player who can get after the quarterback, he can stop the run, and he can make plays in coverage. I think he fits the Lions' defensive scheme very well, and hopefully Patricia is fired here soon enough. With the 6th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Cassidy Merriweather, defensive tackle, Washington State. The Packers already have Kenny Clark in the middle of that defensive line, but they're going to add another beast in the middle of that defensive line with Cassidy Merriweather out of Washington State. This is a great defensive tackle class, specifically in day 2. However, I think Merriweather is the best defensive tackle prospect in this class, and the Packers, who already had one of the better interior defensive lines in the NFL, now have one of the most scary duos with Merriweather and Kenny Clark. With the 7th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Stephen Westwood, quarterback, Westlake. Stephen Westwood will be playing his NFL career in the Steel City. Ben Roethlisberger retired this offseason, and the only quarterback on the Steelers roster at the moment is Duck Hodges. Stephen Westwood is a 3-year starter at Westlake, led the Hornets to a national championship when he was a sophomore, and nearly led them again as a junior. As a senior, the Hornets were not as successful, only making it to the Rose Bowl. However, Stephen Westwood has improved all 3 years as a starter, and the Steelers are getting a guy who can come in right away and change this offense. With the 8th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Thad Cage, safety, Iowa. NFC North, beware. It appears that the Minnesota Vikings have one of the best safety duos in the NFL with Thad Cage and Harrison Smith. Anthony Harris is still on the Vikings roster, although it appears that Harris is not a part of the team's future plans with the selection of Cage, who is one of my favorite prospects in this year's class. With the 9th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Clarence Priester, edge rusher from the University of Georgia. After signing both Von Miller and Brandon Graham in the offseason, the Bengals are not done adding pass rushes. They used the 9th pick on Georgia's Clarence Priester. Miller and Graham aren't particularly young. Both are in their 30s. So in a few years, Priester has a chance to be this team's top pass rusher. With the 10th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jaleel Owens, offensive guard, Iowa State. Iowa State has 2 players selected in the top 10. Maxwell Patterson at 5 to Detroit, and now Jaleel Owens, the guard, going to the Dolphins at 10. Miami knows they need to protect their golden goose, being quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, and they're doing that here with the selection of Owens. Not a flashy pick, but not a bad pick either. With the 11th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Justin Johnson, offensive guard, Florida State University. There were 2 top offensive guard prospects in the class with Jaleel Owens and now Justin Johnson. It appears that the Jets have one-upped their rival and gotten the better prospect. With the 12th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Denver Mullins, linebacker, Clemson. The last time the LA Rams had a first-round pick was 2016 when they selected Jared Goff. Pretty crazy to think about, but nonetheless, Denver Mullins will immediately step in and make an early impact for this Rams defense, who needs more than just Aaron Donald in the front 7. With the 13th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Anthony Mitchell, cornerback, Westlake. This is the second straight season the Chargers have picked a defensive player out of Westlake. Last year it was defensive tackle Octavius October, and this year it's cornerback Anthony Mitchell. Mitchell had an underwhelming senior season, although he is still the first corner off the board. Very talented player, extremely fast with great ball skills. The Chargers are getting a really, really talented corner, and I'm excited to see how his NFL career pans out. With the 14th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Dorian Sawyer, safety, Texas A&M. This is the final selection from the Jamal Adams trade, and the Jets are using it to select a Jamal Adams replacement. Dorian Sawyer should not have been on the board here at 14. I was not expecting him to fall, and I thought he was going to go in the top 10. Not too bad of a selection. With the 15th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select Torian Cook, cornerback, University of Alabama. Although I do believe Anthony Mitchell is the top cornerback prospect in this class, the corner with the highest ceiling is Torian Cook, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. For rich, get richer, and I fully expect Kansas City to be back in playoff contention this upcoming season. With the 16th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Mike Wilson, edge rusher, Westlake. Just like the LA Chargers, Carolina has used both of their first-round selections in this series on former Westlake defensive players. Last year it was safety Marcus Jones. This year it's pass rusher Mike Wilson, who had a breakout season for Westlake, elevating his stock from probably an early day 3 pick to now in the middle of the first round. With the 17th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select Josiah Woolridge, edge rusher, USC. This is the first Houston Texans first-round pick in this series, thanks to Bill O'Brien being a hack, and it's a pretty good pick. Josiah Woolridge is one of the more talented edge rushers in this class. Although J.J. Watt is no longer in Houston, the Texans have a new, young and talented player going after the quarterback. With the 18th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Jackson Worlds, edge rusher from the University of Minnesota. Another edge rusher is off the board. This time it's Jackson Worlds going to Arizona. The Cardinals are clearly trying to rebuild this pass rush. They know Chandler Jones can't do it all, especially since Chandler Jones is getting up there in age. Last year they used their top pick on Jalen Robinson, another edge rusher out of Kentucky. Now they're going to go with the talented Jackson Worlds with this pick. With the 19th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Malik Perkins, running back, Texas A&M. The first running back was off the board before the first wide receiver this year, which is kind of interesting. However, Malik Perkins is a better player than any of the receivers in this draft, so I do not blame Tampa Bay for doing this at all. Malik Perkins will be the lead back for the Bucs right away, and he's going to provide this offense with a much-needed spark plug, especially with Tom Brady being 44 years old now. With the 20th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Tyrone Christmas, wide receiver, Clemson. A trio of A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and Tyrone Christmas down in Nashville. Sounds like a ton of fun, at least for the Titans. I don't think I can say the same for the Jaguars secondary. I think Christmas is a really talented player, and I think he's going to step in right away and be a key player for the Titans. With the 21st pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Jalen Augustine Jr., safety from the University of Miami. As you all probably know, the Jacksonville Jaguars are almost on the clock. The plan was to select Jalen Augustine Jr. with that pick. However, they cannot, as Augustine will be starting his NFL career out in Vegas. This was the player Jacksonville wanted all along. They even tried to trade up with the Raiders, but the Raiders clearly had their guy in mind, and unfortunately for Jacksonville, both teams happened to be targeting the same player. So, excellent pick here in my opinion for the Raiders. With the 22nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Atlantis Parego, edge rusher, Mississippi State University. One of the most polarizing players in the class, edge rusher Atlantis Perego, going to Dallas. He's a very raw guy, but if Dallas can develop him, they're getting themselves a phenomenal pass rusher. With the 23rd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Tarvarius Butler, offensive tackle, Ole Miss. This pick right here by Cleveland puzzles me a little bit, and it's not that the player is bad. Tarvarius Butler is a really good offensive tackle prospect, but the Browns don't need offensive tackle. They have both Jedrick Willis and Jack Conklin already on the roster. What the Browns need is a quarterback, considering Baker Mayfield is now a Giant. The Browns' current starter is 67 overall, Malik Edwards-Hoskins, the 24th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. The San Francisco 49ers select Quan Teller, safety, LSU. Keep in mind the Jaguars are the next team on the clock, as Quan Teller going to San Francisco. The Niners need more help at safety, and I think this is a pretty good pick. So the Jaguars will not be staying on the clock here at pick 25. They will be moving down, and this pick will be going to the Minnesota Vikings. Last year, the Jaguars traded up with Minnesota in order to select offensive tackle Bentley Vander Walson, and now the Vikings are moving up with Jacksonville. So the Jaguars will be trading pick 25, 126, and linebacker Quincy Williams to the Vikings for the 40th pick, the 168th pick, and the 44th projected pick next year. So the Vikings' second rounder next year. Very big trade here. The Jaguars are moving down 15 spots in order to acquire a second rounder next year. And although this does not look like great value for Jacksonville, especially considering they're trading Quincy Williams, who's a talented young player, Williams will have the opportunity to compete for a starting linebacker role right away in Minnesota, an opportunity that he would not have gotten in Jacksonville. The Jaguars' linebacking core is already pretty crowded with the signing of Leighton Vander Esch, along with Miles Jack and Rashawn Babineau. Williams was the odd man out. He's also a free agent in the offseason. Therefore, the Jaguars didn't feel that Williams had all that much value, so that's why they're willing to give him up so easily, as the Jaguars, with their target Jalen Augustine being off the board, trade out of the first round entirely. With the 25th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Tyree Callaway, offensive tackle, University of Michigan. Kind of ironic that the Vikings are now trading up for an offensive tackle with Jacksonville as they go with Tyree Callaway out of Michigan. Really solid pick here by the Vikings. I think Callaway can become this team's future left tackle. They've had Riley Reiff there for the past few seasons, so yeah, this is a position that could use upgrading. With the 26th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Sebastian Edrin, offensive tackle, Texas A&M. The offensive tackles are flying off the board at the moment, as the Bears will select Sebastian Edrin out of Texas A&M. Edrin is only a 65 overall and looks like a massive bust at face value, but he is hidden dev, so I don't think he's going to make an impact all that early on, but I think he could be solid down the line for Chicago. With the 27th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Will Conway, edge rusher, Southern Miss. As good of a head coach as Bill Belichick is, he is such an awful drafter. He does not know how to pick good players, and this year is no different, as it looks like Will Conway here is kind of a bust. With the 28th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Isaac Chittick, wide receiver, Syracuse. Oh my goodness, I don't believe my eyes. The Philadelphia Eagles have drafted a wide receiver who's actually good. Isaac Chittick, in my opinion, is probably the most NFL-ready receiver in this draft class, and arguably the top prospect at this position this year, so hats off to the Eagles. You actually did something right. With the 29th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Washington football team selects Justin Huff, center, Florida State University. This is very similar to Sebastian Edrin going to the Bears a couple of selections ago. Justin Huff is not a good player now, but he is hidden dev, so this is a guy with a lot of upside who could be good down the line for the Washington football team. With the 30th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Evan Walters, offensive tackle, Tennessee. Solid, but not a flashy pick here by Buffalo as they try to improve the offensive line, going with left tackle Evan Walters, who I think can be a guy who starts early on in his NFL career and is a very high floor offensive tackle. 31st pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Mello Dukes, linebacker, USC. Last year, the Giants had the number 1 overall pick, and they drafted Westlake linebacker Louis Kahn. Obviously, that pick worked out considering they just made the Super Bowl, but this year their linebacker is a complete bust. Although Mello Dukes has a sick name, he's a pretty bad player. And with the 32nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Alex Voyance, defensive tackle, University of Central Arkansas. Welcome to the first round to the University of Central Arkansas. Kind of sad that the Razorbacks can't get a first-round pick, yet Central Arkansas does. Nonetheless, Alex Voyance to the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens lost a lot of pieces. Orlando Brown, Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, and others are gone. But one of their big weaknesses last year was the interior of the defensive line. So that'll do it for the first round. Here's a little graphic I've made with all of the first-round selections. Our Jaguars obviously traded out of the 25th pick. However, we have 2 second-round picks now, picks 40 and 57, so we're definitely going to do some damage here on day 2. Obviously, I will not go over every pick like I just did for the rest of the draft. What I usually do here is I go over every first-round pick, and then for the remaining rounds, I'll go over all Jaguar picks, any picks with a player out of Westlake, and any other picks of interest. So the remaining 6 rounds are going to go a lot quicker, as I only talk about the super interesting picks. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of busts who start to come off the board, considering it's very hard to draft outside of the first round. So hopefully, our Jaguars can find some good players who can contribute right away and for the future. Let's get the second round underway. With the 35th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Dwight Garrett, safety, UCLA. With Jacksonville's huge need at 3 safety, I imagine Dwight Garrett was very high on their board. For those wondering, Dwight Garrett is the younger brother of Minnesota Vikings quarterback Preston Garrett III, who will probably start this year. Dwight here is also the older brother of Cedric Garrett, who is the forward in the Cleveland Cavaliers series. Dwight here is a really good prospect himself, and him and Justin Simmons is going to be very fun in the Mile High City. With the 36th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Dwayne Morton, offensive tackle, Westlake. Another Westlake player is off the board. This time it's offensive tackle Dwayne Morton going to the Indianapolis Colts. Morton only started 1 year for Westlake. He was the right tackle this past season as a senior, and he had his ups and downs, but he is a very quality player, and the Colts are getting a guy who will step in right away and be a very solid replacement for Braden Smith. With the 40th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Julius Williams, safety, Oregon. For the 3rd straight season, the Jaguars' first pick is a defensive back as they select Julius Williams, the safety out of Oregon. Williams is a 76 overall, the 9th ranked player in the draft with normal development. This is a really good pick in my opinion for Jacksonville, a very high floor safety who will come in right away and be a day 1 starter for the team. Williams is a guy at Oregon who is a very well-rounded player. Only played 2 years with the Ducks, obviously declared here as a redshirt sophomore, One of the better tackling players in this draft. He's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. Doesn't do one thing particularly great. He does need to improve in coverage a little bit. He can be inconsistent, but he can make plays in coverage. He can make plays on the ball, and he can stop the run, which is really what you want in a safety. He's a pretty smart player for a 21-year-old, and I think him and Ronnie Harrison can be a really good safety duo. Williams does not have elite upside, but his high floor is the main reason why the Jaguars picked him here. With the 42nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Marcus Granson, safety from the University of Texas. The two players Jacksonville was considering at pick 40 was Julius Williams and Marcus Granson. Obviously, Williams was the pick, but Granson will not have to wait too much longer to hear his name called as he goes to the Dolphins. Granson is a little bit more raw, but has more upside in my opinion. Can't really go wrong with either of these two safeties. Nice pick by the Dolphins. With the 55th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Joaquin Tejada, defensive tackle, Oklahoma State. Joaquin Tejada is one of the best football players in this draft, and the Cleveland Browns got themselves a monster in the interior of their defensive line. The reason why Tejada is only a second-round pick is because a lot of scouts are questioning his commitment to play in the NFL. Tejada never planned on being a professional football player, however, decided last minute to enter the NFL draft and will be starting his NFL career with the Browns. With the 57th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Koko Onwusu, quarterback, Michigan State. Ladies and gentlemen, they have done it. The Jacksonville Jaguars have selected a quarterback. Koko Onwusu is a Jaguar. This is a very raw player, and I'm going to tell you all right now, Gardner Minshew will be the Week 1 starter in Jacksonville. Although Koko Onwusu will be competing with Minshew in training camp, it will not be to start Week 1. And the reason is, Koko's just not good enough yet. However, he has a ton of upside. I don't like calling him a quarterback. I like calling him an athlete who can throw the football. Look at that run, juking out a defender. Koko here has plenty of arm talent. He can launch absolute bombs. He is an absolute cannon, and he's fairly accurate. He's good in the short game, and he has a beautiful deep ball. He does need to improve his intermediate passes, which is a little bit of a concern, but obviously he doesn't really have to worry because he's not going to start right away. There are some medical question marks with Onwusu. He has some durability issues, and he's fairly new to football. He only started playing when he was a teenager, so he still has a lot of learning to do, only 60 awareness, and although he's not that good of a player right now, the sky is the limit for this young man. I'm not ready to call him Jacksonville's franchise quarterback because he still has a lot of question marks, but the upside is certainly there, and Gardner Minshew is definitely on the hot seat right now. With the 60th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Taj Mayfield III, running back, Baylor. If J.K. Dobbins was not just traded to the Jaguars, chances are they would have been in high pursuit for running back Taj Mayfield III, who is a Viking. Him and Dalvin Cook is going to be a lethal backfield. The 61st pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Washington football team selects Darnell Middlebrooks, wide receiver, Nebraska. I know I called Eagles receiver Isaac Chittick the most NFL-ready wide receiver in this class, but I might have lied. That honor, I believe, belongs to Darnell Middlebrooks out of Nebraska. Washington has a really nice wide receiver trio with Middlebrooks, Orie Luco, and Terry McLaurin. By the way, the Jaguars play the Washington football team Week 1 in Sunday Night Football, so that game's going to be a lot of fun. That will conclude round 2. Obviously, I didn't go over many picks, simply because, well, there weren't a ton of interesting picks. Our Jaguars picked 2 players, safety Julius Williams and quarterback Koko Onwusu. I'm very excited and curious to see how Onwusu turns out. Obviously, as I mentioned, he's super raw, but he could be our franchise quarterback. With the 65th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Kendrick Savage III, quarterback, University of Illinois. The Atlanta Falcons go with the other coveted Day 2 QB prospect as they select Kendrick Savage II out of Illinois. Savage is a similar prospect, in my opinion, to Koko Onwosu, and I don't think the Jaguars could have gone wrong with selecting Onwosu or Savage. Savage will be behind Matt Ryan as a rookie. However, I think Kendrick Savage could start as early as next season for the Atlanta Falcons as their potential franchise QB. With the 68th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Stephen Allen, offensive guard, Westlake. The Colts have used both of their Day 2 selections on a pair of Westlake offensive linemen as they select the guard Stephen Allen. I think Allen is actually the better prospect than Dwayne Morton, who they used their second-round pick on. So a very nice value selection here by the Indianapolis Colts. With the 82nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Austin Cotter, defensive tackle, University of Illinois. This is actually Jim Cotter. I accidentally called him Austin Cotter because Jim's brother Austin is a defensive tackle on the Titans. Austin Cotter was Tennessee's first-round pick last year, and now they use their third-round pick on Jim Cotter. So the Titans have the Cotter brothers as their defensive tackle duo of the future, along with Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons going after the quarterback. That's a really good defensive line for the Titans. With the 89th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Casey Shock, wide receiver, Toledo. Casey Shock's name does not deceive you. 4.28 speed. In Jacksonville, you've got your guys a new vertical threat. 71 overall with hidden development. This man can fly. He is a world-class athlete, but the rest of his game is a little bit raw. Obviously, he has great speed, great acceleration, great agility, great change of direction. This guy's an athlete, but he needs work as a receiver. His hands can be very inconsistent. As a route runner, not great. He has good deep routes. Look at him here, burning. Guess who that is? Julius Williams, who is now his teammate. However, the short and medium routes, Shock does struggle with a little bit, so you really need to refine him, and he's not a guy who's going to be great right away. However, when the ball is in his hands, he is electric. This young man has the upside to be a phenomenal player in this league. If he can get better hands and improve as a route runner, he will be a top receiver in the NFL. Count on it. I do expect him to get plenty of playing time this year as a kick returner and snaps at receiver. However, his rookie year might be a little bit ugly, so just be patient with him because he has potential. That will conclude the third round. A number of interesting picks. Jacksonville with one selection, going with the speedy wide receiver Casey Shock out of Toledo. So now that Day 2 is in the books, we are now on to Day 3, where it's going to be even harder to draft good players. The Jaguars have a bunch of Day 3 selections, so hopefully they can land a couple hits. With the 106th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Tristan Moon, cornerback, Westlake. Unfortunately for the Jaguars, they were actually trying to trade up for Tristan Moon. However, he will be selected by the Miami Dolphins. A very talented corner. He's a little bit raw, but he has a lot of upside, and at just 20 years old, the Dolphins got themselves a guy who could be really good. However, the Jaguars will still be moving up. They wanted to move up here with the Chargers to select Tristan Moon, and although Moon is off the board, the Jaguars will still be moving up. They will be trading picks 136 and 168 here to move up with the Chargers to get pick 109. Since Jacksonville has so many Day 3 picks, they're willing to trade some away to move up. With the 109th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Bleat Friarwood, defensive tackle from Manitoba, Canada. It'll be Canada's finest, Bleat Friarwood from Manitoba, going to the Jaguars. Bleat is a 71 overall, 43rd in true talent, so a very solid value pick here for the Jaguars. Friarwood is a very talented player. He can get after a quarterback, and he can stop the run. If Friarwood performs better than Devon Hamilton early on in training camp and in preseason, then I would totally expect Friarwood to get a lot of snaps as that defensive tackle number 2. Obviously, Friarwood has had an unconventional way of entering the pros. Rather than going to an American college, he has stayed home in Canada and has gone to a Canadian university. Despite this, if you're an NFL prospect and you have talent, NFL teams will be interested regardless of where you're from, and Friarwood will be starting his career down south with the Jaguars. 92 strength, he is certainly a bull. 76 power move, 70 block shedding, and 64 finesse. He's not going to beat you with his speed and athleticism. However, he's going to beat you with his strength and power. I think him and Sheldon Rankins can be a really nice duo up the middle. With the 121st pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select David Harris, linebacker, Westlake. How about the Jaguars selecting another Westlake Hornet? This time it'll be linebacker David Harris, who is a 68 overall with hidden development. I think David Harris can step in and pretty much have the role that Quincy Williams had last year as a rotational linebacker who won't get a ton of snaps but can make an impact. I think the goal for the Jaguars is that Harris would eventually be a long-term starter. David Harris had a really good season this year at Westlake as a redshirt sophomore. Only a one-year starter, but he clearly felt like he was ready enough to enter the NFL. And I think this is a really solid selection here in the middle of the 4th round for the Jaguars, considering what Harris showed last year, and in my opinion, the upside that David Harris brings. Harris is very well-rounded. He was great against the run and against the pass. I believe he was second on Westlake in interceptions last year, only behind Anthony Mitchell. Very solid pick here for the Jags. With the 122nd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select R.J. Ewell, running back, East Carolina. The Jaguars are going to go with another player here who just entered the draft as a recent declare, that being running back R.J. Ewell. The Jaguars had back-to-back picks here in the 4th round, and I think both players they selected, first Harris and now R.J. Ewell, had the chance to be big hits. Ewell is a little bit raw in my opinion, and considering that the Jaguars have Phillip Lindsay, J.K. Dobbins, and Kyra Brooks already on the roster, I don't think Ewell will have a huge impact on day one, which is fine because he needs a little bit more development. However, I do believe the East Carolina prospect has the potential to be a really good running back in the NFL. Ewell has a ton of athleticism, great speed, and agility. He needs work as a receiver, although there is a lot of potential there in my opinion. He's not an overly big guy. He's not small at 6 foot 213, but he needs more play strength and he needs to get stronger. If he can bulk up, get more power, and get a little bit better in the receiving game, then there's no reason that R.J. Ewell can't be one of the better backs in the NFL. He needs some development, but if the Jaguars can develop him, I think this will be an absolute steal for the 4th round. So that'll do it for round 4. Jacksonville with 3 picks in that round, and in my opinion, the Jaguars did pretty well. Even though their top target, Tristan Moon, was picked a little bit earlier by the Dolphins, in my opinion, the Jaguars ended up with 3 good players, all of whom could make big impacts on the team going forward. Let's move on to the 5th round here. Not too many more interesting picks left outside of any Jaguar picks. With the 129th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Dante Rollins, edge rusher, Westlake. There are still a few Westlake players on the board, including Dante Rollins, who goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Rollins could have started next year, but decided to declare, which is odd, because Rollins has actually never started his collegiate career. Nonetheless, I think the Atlanta Falcons have had a great draft. Hats off to them, and I think the Falcons are going to be a really good team going forward. With the 149th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Paul King, cornerback, Westlake. I'm a big fan of this pick for the Las Vegas Raiders because I think Paul King really fits for Raiders, specifically fits what Al Davis would do. I'm sure Al Davis is having a dance party in his grave right now because Paul King is 98 speed. King is very raw, and he struggled in his lone season as a starter for Westlake. However, the athletic upside is there, and I really hope he turns into a good NFL player. With the 153rd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Sifris Bournang, edge rusher from the University of Florida. Despite signing both Fulton Reynoso Fadukazi and Taco Charlton in free agency, the Jaguars are going to go for another edge rusher as they select Sifris Bournang out of Florida. The Gators obviously won the national championship this past season, and Bournang was a huge part of that. Let's look at this game here against Virginia Tech in the national championship, and Bournang was one of the key players in the Gators' victory, and without him, I don't think Florida wins this game. One of the unsung heroes on this Florida defense. Bournang is a very solid pass rusher. He had 8 sacks this year for the Florida Gators, which led the team, and I think this guy could be a really solid rotational edge rusher for the Jaguars. Doesn't have elite athleticism, but he's a very powerful lineman, and I think he can make plays in the pass and the run game. So that'll do it for the 5th round. A few Westlake players off the board. The Jaguars used their lone 5th rounder on Sifris Bournang. The Jaguars only have 3 more selections to go, and obviously in the 6th and 7th rounds, it's very hard to draft good football players, so the best GMs and the best teams know how to draft in the late rounds. So the Falcons have the first pick in the 6th round. However, the Jaguars have a player they're eyeing, and both teams will agree to the trade. So a bang here to start the 6th round. The Jaguars will be giving up a 6 and a 7 this year to move up to the early part of the 6th. I know this does not look like great value for the Jaguars, giving up 2 day 3 picks to get 1, but there's a player the Jags really want. With the 161st pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Simba Azikiwe, tight end, Duke. The Jaguars did not believe tight end Simba Azikiwe would fall to their pick, and they really wanted Azikiwe, so they're going to move up and get him. A very athletic tight end. Has a lot of similarities to David Njoku. A freak athlete, 89 speed, that is extremely fast for a tight end, and Azikiwe has a lot of potential. He was the leading receiver this year for Duke, and in my opinion, if David Njoku and Daniel Romer don't work out at the tight end position, I think Azikiwe has the upside to become a starter in this league. Not a great blocker. He has to get better with that, and I think the same can be said about Jacksonville's 2 current tight ends in David Njoku and Daniel Romer. But look at this play, tipped by the Michigan State defensive back, but Azikiwe was there to make the catch. One of my favorite prospects in this year's class. I think this is really solid value here in the 6th round, and I see why the Jaguars really wanted to move up and get him. He's not going to play a ton early on, probably some special team snaps, but he's one of the players who I'm really excited to see how they do in the preseason. So obviously the Jaguars traded away their other 6th round pick. Jacksonville only has 1 more pick left, that is pick 222 from Buffalo in the Taven Bryan trade that they made last year. No other interesting picks than that. Let's see who the Jaguars pick at 222. And with the 222nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Federico Hernandez Rios, punter, New Mexico State University. For the 2nd straight season, the Jaguars will use their final selection on a special teamer. Last year it was kicker Volker Gantz, who ended up going on the Jaguars practice squad. He signed with the Rams and played there last year, and then returned to Jacksonville here in free agency. Now they're going to add Federico Hernandez Rios out of New Mexico State. Logan Cook is no longer on the team, and although the Jaguars signed Jack Fox, they wanted to add another punter to have a camp battle with Fox. Reports say that the Jaguars plan on signing one of the following undrafted punters, either Westlake's Greg Guillory or Mississippi Valley State's Brian Amaya Jr. With teams very interested in Guillory, chances are the Jaguars will look to sign Brian Amaya Jr. instead of Guillory. Federico Hernandez-Rios has a really solid leg. There's not much else to talk about there. I mean, it's a punter. I don't really know how to give analysis on a punter. So that will do it here for the draft, as we are officially in the books. 9 rookies who are going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, some of which, like Julius Williams, will make impacts right away, and others, like Koko Onwosu, you might have to wait a little bit. I think the Jaguars had a really good draft, though. I think they got 9 really solid football players, in my opinion. The Jaguars went for value, athleticism, and for the most part, upside. And a lot of these guys, like Koko Onwosu, like Casey Shock, like RJ Ewell, all have super high ceilings. I think Simba Azikiwe as well has a really high ceiling for a 6th round pick. So that will end the episode. I do plan on streaming the preseason on this channel on Tuesday at around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually I stream on Twitch, but I've had a few problems with Twitch lately, specifically with streams just like lagging out sometimes. So I'm going to stream here on this channel, and I have not live streamed on this channel in a while, so I am curious to see how it goes, but I'm also pretty excited. I hope you guys can make it if you can. We're going to have a lot of fun in that stream. Obviously, watch some of these rookies for the first time, and then after that, we will advance to the regular season and have opening game later this upcoming week. Hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And as always, have a good one. Peace out. Happy Saturday.